Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are all doing very well today. I'd like to talk to you about a viewer question that I received from a dear friend of ours, and he sent a question. This was a while back, so I really apologize for the lateness of this reply. This is for our dear friend Ben. So Ben, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well. It's always nice to talk with you. You asked a question some weeks back, actually, a couple months back. I apologize for the lateness of this reply, but your question was this. As for a question, I would ask you who you feel are the most important directors not represented in the Criterion Collection. So, which directors do you feel are important but are not represented in the Criterion Collection as of now? Okay, so this is a very good question, Ben. And so Ben very kindly allowed me to respond in a video, and I very rudely neglected to answer his question until now. So once again, I really apologize for the lateness of this reply, Ben. I hope you can forgive me. It did take me a little bit of time to think about it because, you know, the idea of trying to find directors that are not represented in the collection as of now is a little bit difficult, because if I name one, I think that means that I leave off 100. So, and I think what my list might be would probably differ from what your list might be or what others might be. So it's a little bit difficult to pin down a concrete number. And also, I don't know what the situation is with respect to the Criterion channel. Perhaps some of the directors that I'm about to mention are represented on the Criterion channel. I'm not sure. But if they aren't, and if the directors are not represented as of now, which is the beginning of June 2019, then perhaps here is just an example, if you will, not a definitive list, but just an example of some directors that I think are worth considering in the Criterion Collection. In other words, they are not necessarily represented now, but I think it would be really worth it if they were. I should try to point out a few sort of parameters here. So first, I'm going to try to mention directors that I haven't yet mentioned on this channel, and so I just want to try to keep it a little bit, just try to keep a little bit of variety as possible. And also, I just want to emphasize that this is not in any way a definitive list, because I could change my mind at any time. I could probably try to, maybe I forgot a director, and I might change my mind accordingly. But this is my opinion as of now. Again, this is not in any way hard and fast. It's just an example of some directors that I think are worth considering. Also, I'm going to try to keep it to directors that don't have any representation at all in the Criterion Collection, physical media collection, as of now, June 2019. I think all the directors I've thought about are not currently represented, so if I'm mistaken in that front, please let me know. Also, if any of these films or directors' films are available on the Criterion channel as well, please let me know. I think that would be very interesting information. Okay, so with that in mind, Ben, so here are just some examples of directors that I think are not represented yet in the Criterion Collection, but I think it would be worthwhile if they were. So here we go. The first director is this director, who has a film in the Eureka Masters of Cinema collection, but curiously, there's no film in the Criterion Collection. So the film is The Morning Forest, and the director is Naomi Collison. Naomi Collison. So I don't know if you've heard of her or not, but she is a contemporary Japanese filmmaker. She is quite a phenomenon in the maybe art house film circuit, but her films are quite unique, and there's a very singular voice at work here. Very beautiful, very haunting, with an assured sense of confidence in the subject matter, and there is something quite profound at work here. And for example, in The Morning Forest, which is a film that I would recommend strongly. So Naomi Collison, as a contemporary Japanese filmmaker, I think it would be very interesting to see one or more of her works included in the Criterion Collection. As of now, June 2019, I do not think that there are any films by her in the physical media collection. As I said, there is this film in the Eureka Masters of Cinema collection. Of course, her films are available in Japanese, on Japanese DVDs and the like, and I have a couple actually that are Japanese-only releases. But it would be really nice to see Naomi Collison's work more represented in the Criterion Collection. I think a lot of people might find her work to be very, very interesting indeed. So, for your consideration, Naomi Collison. Next is a filmmaker that I've really wanted to talk about for the longest time, but I just haven't had a chance to approach his work on this channel, unfortunately. But the filmmaker is an Italian filmmaker, and I think he's a filmmaker that has already a lot of attention and quite a number of great releases on Blu-ray in English. So I don't think it's a matter of him or his works not getting the attention that they deserve. On the contrary, I think his films are already getting a lot of attention, and he's always been a popular filmmaker, maybe cult status, but I think much more than that. He is quite a phenomenon, very important in the context of Italian horror film. But I think a film by Mario Bava in the Criterion Collection would make such a bold statement. It really would. It would make such a bold statement. And I really think that Mario Bava's work is deserving of a kind of critical assessment. And I mean, I think it's already happening, and which is great. But I think Bava's work is, I mean, they're horror films, and they're quite, most of them are, and some of them are quite intense, but they are through and through works of art, and they are affecting and effective, and they are quite chilling and unforgettable. They are filled with moments of cold horror, some quite brutal indeed, especially when you get to the later part of his career. But some of his earlier films are also quite blood-curdlingly, bone-chillingly, just knock your socks off, unforgettable. So, and that has a lot to do with the craft of film, the art of film, his artistry, and what he is doing to achieve the effect that it is he wants to achieve. So Mario Bava is a filmmaker whose work I think really deserves as much critical assessment attention that it can get, because I think his work is quite important, and it's the kind of work that I think it's about time. I think it would be really nice to see Criterion give Mario Bava some attention if it could. Of course, Bava's work has a lot of great attention given to it by Arrow, an example which being Black Sunday, which is right here, which is great, by the way, absolutely great. But I would just say that, as fans of the Criterion Collection, it would just be nice to see a Mario Bava film in the Criterion Collection, would it not? That would be so great to see a Mario Bava film, or Italian horror film. A special mention, I suppose, should go to films by maybe Dario Argento, Fulci. That would be great to have a Lucio Fulci film in the Criterion Collection. That would be an amazing thing indeed. Or Dario Argento film in the Criterion Collection, or Mario Bava film in the Criterion Collection. Oh my goodness, that would be just something else indeed. And I think they would be good sellers for Criterion, because I have a feeling that Italian horror of this era is still an area of cinema that is fairly popular, or at least I hope so. So anyway, for your consideration, my friends, Mario Bava. Next is a filmmaker that I haven't mentioned, or I might have mentioned in passing. I think his works are more interesting in the earlier part of his filmography rather than the later part of his filmography. Although I did see his most recent film in the theater with my daughter maybe about a month or so ago, and we really enjoyed the film. The film that we saw, incidentally, was Dumbo, and the filmmaker that I'm talking about is Tim Burton. Tim Burton. Now, Tim Burton is a filmmaker that as I said, I love his early filmography. I love his work, the Edward Scissorhands era, and the Batman films. I think I like Batman very much. I really love Batman, but for me, Batman Returns is, where all the interesting stuff is going on. And I think we have Tim Burton firing on all cylinders as far as his own creativity is concerned and what it is he's concerned with. And I really believe that what we have with Tim Burton around this time in his career, the 80s and 90s, early 90s, is a filmmaker that is really pushing the envelope when it comes to personal vision versus the commercial impulse in cinema. And so I think that's such an important aspect of modern American filmmaking. And it's also nice to see his early filmography, where I think a lot of his personal vision, however you want to call it, was on display with such vigor and such forcefulness that I think it was wonderful. And Batman Returns is, I think, a film that is of that caliber. I really, really, really admire this film very much. It's bloody, it's quite unpleasant in some places, it's a bit intense. It's not a film that I think one should show one's 3-year-old, for example, but it's a film that is, I think, very very brave, and it's juggling a lot of characters and a lot of themes, but it's doing it in a way that is so, how should I put it, Burton-esque. It is relentless, it is wry, quite dark, and very it's almost cruel. It's very cruel, and it's how one deals with this cruelty. Do we deal with it with anger, or do we laugh it off, or do we use other means in order to combat the cruelty of this world? And it becomes like a farce, or it becomes like this Baroque thing, or it becomes like a grand guignol kind of battle of the senses, and the whole landscape becomes like this over-the-top thing. And that is the confectionery delight that is the Tim Burton film. And there is, in my opinion, no better example of that than Batman Returns. So anyway, Tim Burton films in the Criterion Collection. Wow, that would be such an interesting thing indeed. But who knows? Anyway, for your consideration, Tim Burton. Next is another filmmaker from Iran. And this filmmaker is a filmmaker that I think is getting a lot of attention, or getting more attention on Arrow Academy releases, which is great. But it would be nice to see this filmmaker receive attention in the Criterion Collection. Now, there is a certain connection already with the Criterion Collection, but let me just say this first. The filmmaker is Mohsen Makhmalbaf. And for those of you who know the film Close Up, the Abbas Kiarostami film Close Up, you'll probably recognize the name of Makhmalbaf. But Mohsen Makhmalbaf is a filmmaker as well. And the filmmaker, Makhmalbaf, has made a number of films. I have this film in particular, A Moment of Innocence, to show here. I think, I don't know if this is still available. This is an old New Yorker video DVD of this film, and I don't think it's available on Blu-ray. I don't know. If you have any information about this, please let me know. But oh gosh, A Moment of Innocence. Makhmalbaf's A Moment of Innocence is such a challenging film. There are many similarities with the film Close Up in many ways, in terms of the playfulness of narrative, the deftness in which certain conventions are broken in terms of narrative structure of cinema. This is a deeply challenging work on many levels, and it is such a delight. It is such a work of profound art. It is moving. It is a wonderful human drama, and it is a film that I wish more people could watch. Now, again, if this is available more readily, please let me know, and I'd be very happy to spread the word out to my friends. But A Moment of Innocence, an example of a film by Mohsen Makhmalbaf. And so Mohsen Makhmalbaf would be a great addition to the Criterion Collection. As far as I can recall at the moment, his films per se are not included in the Criterion Collection, but hopefully that will change. But anyway, for your consideration, Mohsen Makhmalbaf. Next is a filmmaker that I think is very important for a number of films that he's made, but there's a particular series of films that he is responsible for that I think is his masterwork. And I think if Criterion could ever get its hands on the Up series, if Criterion could get its hands on the Up series, Michael Apted, the Up documentary series, that would be something else. In the meantime, of course, I do have this DVD, and there's one more DVD that I have of the latest one, or the last one before this newest one. So. What is it, 56 Up. So this is from 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, and 49 Up. And then there's one more disc that I have of 56 Up. But this documentary series is something else. If you haven't seen any of the Up series films, oh gosh, you have to stop this video now and try to find an Up movie. Now, I think the latest Up film, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the latest Up film is going to be released this year, or maybe even this month, I don't know. I think it's 63 Up, am I right? So 63 Up. If anyone has any information about this, please let me know. I did remember seeing someone, maybe it was on Facebook, talking about 63 Up. But if that's the case, then oh boy, it would be great to see Michael Apted's work included in the Criterion Collection. Oh man, I would love to see this series Up films, or Michael Apted film in general. But oh gosh. Anyway, Michael Apted, and in particular, Michael Apted's work in the Up documentary series, so for your consideration. Next is a filmmaker that I might have spoken about, but I might have spoken about him in passing with respect to films that I'd like to see in the Criterion Collection. But I don't know. Ho Xiaoshen. Ho Xiaoshen is a filmmaker that needs as much attention as he can get as far as North American releases are concerned, or European releases are concerned. His films are just man, they are just something else indeed. They are just staggering, absolutely staggering. And I'm doing videos on Edward Yang films, and there is of course a connection there. What I love about Hou Xiaoshen's films, he's dealing with certain themes and background that Edward Yang doesn't necessarily deal with in his works. So they form a nice complement to each other, I think, Hou Xiaoshen's works and Edward Yang's work. But that's probably a topic for another day. But this is his film City of Sadness. Now, at the moment, City of Sadness is a film that I'm not sure has an official English language release. And so this is my Japanese DVD of City of Sadness, and it would be so wonderful if, for example, the Criterion Collection were to release a Hou Xiaoshen film, and that film were to be, for example, City of Sadness. My goodness, the ripples that that would cause in the film fan community, it would just be like just a tremendous wave of celebration and excitement. That's for sure. But yes, Hou Xiaoshen would be great. I mean, he has a plentiful filmography as it is, but if we can get any Hou Xiaoshen film in the collection, that would be great. Masters of Cinema Eureka has Hou Xiaoshen works already. So Criterion, it might be a good opportunity to include some of his works if they are indeed available. So anyway, for your consideration, Hou Xiaoshen. Next filmmaker is a filmmaker that I think has a kind of indirect connection with the Criterion Collection already, but as far as I can tell, none of his films are directly included in the Criterion Collection so far. So what filmmaker am I talking about? The filmmaker I'm talking about is Vera Hertzog. So Vera Hertzog has a connection already because the work Burton of Dreams is included in the Criterion Collection 287, but as of now, none of Vera Herzog's directed works is included in the Criterion Collection. And it would be something so wonderful. It would be so wonderful if one or more films directed by Vera Herzog was or were to be included in the Criterion Collection. Oh my goodness. My goodness, that would be something else indeed. And so there are just, I don't know if you've ever seen a Vera Herzog film, but it's like once you've seen a Vera Herzog film, your life has changed forever because they are so, there's this odd way in which a Vera Herzog film is, I think, at once so madcap and wild, and yet it really tends to sort of boil down the human experience down to its essence. I don't know if that makes sense, but and so he uses sort of great, wildly inventive metaphor to present this core essence, if you will, of humanity, which is quite bold sometimes, oftentimes can be quite frustrating as a viewer, but in an excellent way, of course. That's what all great art should do, is to frustrate and to provoke and to make one think and to make one feel. And that's what Vera Herzog's works do all the time. So it would be wonderful to see Vera Herzog work. Who knows, maybe as a complement to this film, Fritz Geraldo would be great. But anyway, for your consideration, Criterion Collection, Vera Herzog. Next is a filmmaker that I have mentioned before, or at least I've mentioned one or two films by him, but I haven't talked about his career in great length. And I'm very sad about that because I really, really love this filmmaker so much. And this filmmaker's films mean so much to me. It would be so great to see in the Criterion Collection, a film directed by the one and only John Carpenter. John Carpenter and the Criterion Collection. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What a thing that would be. Now, of course, I should say that John Carpenter does already have a connection with the Criterion Collection already, because, as you can see, the film Halloween had been released as a Criterion Collection Laserdisc. So, there we go. So there was a connection with John Carpenter and the Criterion Collection. But of course now with the current DVD and Blu-ray collection, there is no John Carpenter film. My goodness, what a thing it would be if a John Carpenter film were included in the Criterion Collection. A film like The Thing, which I think it's his supreme masterpiece. The Thing. I of course have a great fondness, great fondness for Big Trouble in Little China that will never ever leave me. That is perhaps one of my favorite films of all time. It is a film that I can watch over and over again and I will never get tired of it. Total Concentration. Are you ready, Jack? I was born ready. And so, yeah, you better believe that if Big Trouble in Little China were ever to be in the Criterion Collection, my goodness, I would not sleep for days. I would just watch that Criterion disc over and over again in sheer delight. But that's just an example of how much I love John Carpenter's work. Of course, The Thing is, I think, his supreme masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. This film is a masterpiece. And it's not just a horror genre masterpiece. It is a cinematic masterpiece. And this is, I think, one of the most important American films from the 1980s, period. And one of these days I'd love to talk about this and how important I think this film is. But, and that's probably best left for another day. But this is an example, I think, of something that could add a great deal it could add a great deal to the Criterion Collection were it ever to be included. But there are other films, of course, by John Carpenter that are so worth it. Christine, I think, would be a great addition. Prince of Darkness, I think, would be a really great addition to the Criterion Collection. There are some very bold ideas in Prince of Darkness that I think are well worth memorializing, if you will, in a Criterion Collection in a Criterion Collection DVD or Blu-ray. But for me, it's probably The Thing. I guess I could also give a shout out to hold on, this one, Halloween, which is what I mentioned before. But I think, well, actually, no, I should mention Halloween, because Halloween is still, to this day, one of the most important American films from the 1970s. It is not just a horror film, although it is a great horror film, but this is such an important work in terms of its place in American independent cinema, in terms of its place in the growth of a certain genre cinema in America, that is the horror film or slasher film. And, for better or for worse, like it or not, I think the slasher horror genre movement, if you will, forms, I think, a very lucrative part of American cinema history, or modern American cinema history. And that strand still exists to this very day in contemporary cinema, at least I would argue. So, and a lot of it has to do with Halloween. Of course, there were many other antecedents that came prior to Halloween. Of course, I do acknowledge that wholeheartedly. But still, we cannot deny the importance of this film historically. But also, as an entertainment, it really works. As a work of art, my goodness, there are moments here that are just, they rival Hitchcock, I would say. They rival some aspects of the French New Wave, I would say. There are tricks here that I think are there's something about an exploration of the slice of life Americana culture. There's something here about the the dangers of youth culture and the like. And I think when I say the danger of youth culture, I really mean the dangers or the risks that youth culture potentially faces. Let me put it that way. And just above it all, of course, it's just a sheer fun thrill ride. And so, yes, John Carpenter and the Criterion Collection. One of these days, if that were to happen, I think, yes, if that were to happen, you're all invited. The party's at my house. It's party like it's 1999. So it's just, that would just be one of the great. That would be just so great to have a John Carpenter film in the Criterion Collection one of these days. But again, we do have a precedent because Halloween had been released as a Criterion Collection Laserdisc, so it's not totally outside the realm of possibility. But I still remain cautiously optimistic or realistic as far as the chances of that happening. But again, it's better to dream than not dream at all, I should say. So anyway, for your consideration, John Carpenter for the Criterion Collection. And I think that's it for now. I'm sorry if I've taken up some time. There are, of course, many others that I could have mentioned, but I just didn't, just for the sake of time. I could have mentioned Alejandro Jodorowsky. I wish I could have mentioned him, but maybe I will in another video. Katsuhiro Otomo. I just got the Blu-ray of Akira, so that would be one that I think would be worth mentioning. Teo Angelopoulos, of course, Traveling Players. That would be great. Do I have it here? Yes. I mean, what this? Right? Yeah, one of the best DVD sets. I know a lot of people have mentioned his works, and I would love to talk about his works in a separate video, because I think his works are just they need. I'd love to discuss them, because I know many of you out there are fans of his works, and so, man, this is a great set. Criterion, that would be so great for you to get some. If you could release the Traveling Players, that would just be just out of this world. But oh gosh, there are other Japanese filmmakers as well. I mentioned Kawase, of course, but there are other Japanese filmmakers that I neglected to mention in this video just for the sake of saving time. So I guess I could have mentioned Susumu Hani or Sachiko Hidari or Shuji Terayama or Tsukamoto, right? Iron Man series, or Takashi Miike. Oh gosh, if Criterion could ever release a Takashi Miike film, my goodness, that man. There are just a couple of examples. I mean, for instance, if I know that Miike's Dead or Alive films have been released by Arrow, and I actually have it somewhere in my shelves here. But oh man, if Miike's films could be released in the Criterion Collection, could you imagine a box set, a Miike box set? Man. Spine 1000. There's another contender. Takashi Miike box set of all of his films. That would be something else entirely. Let's ask our friend Eric at Asian Movie Enthusiast and see what his thoughts are for Spine 1000 in the Criterion Collection for Takashi Miike's complete filmography in a box set. That would be great. But also Tsukamoto, yes, the filmmaker Tsukamoto, and his films, Iron Man, Tetsuo Iron Man, and I mean, that film is something else entirely. It is just a bizarre, cool, punk cyberpunk, experimental mess of a film, and it's a glorious, beautiful mess. And when I say mess, I mean the kind of mess that you see in great art, Picasso, kind of arrangement of chaos in a way that is an expression of true art. That is Tsukamoto, and that is Tetsuo Iron Man, I think. And oh man, if Tsukamoto's work could somehow get into the Criterion Collection, that would be something else indeed. That would be so great. But anyway, I'm rambling. I apologize. But I guess the point is that for every one filmmaker I mentioned, there are, I think, 100 or 1,000 that I haven't. And so if you have any thoughts or comments about any filmmakers that you think are, as of yet, not well represented in the Criterion Collection, please let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear what you have to say. And if you have any thoughts or comments about what I've said just now, please, of course, let me know. I'm very happy to hear what you have to think. This sort of thing is a very fun exercise, of course, because it leads to many different possibilities. And so I think the possibility for conversations is endless. So yes, let's keep the conversations going if we can. So anyway, my friends, thank you very much. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great films. And thank you very much to our dear friend, Ben. Merci beaucoup, mon ami, for sending me this very great question. So thank you very much, Ben. And so until we meet again, cheers.